There's something uniquely unsettling about working the night shift. The silence of a deserted workplace, the long hours of darkness, and the isolation can make the most mundane tasks feel eerie. But for some night shift workers, the terror becomes all too real. In this video, we're going to dive into 3 spine-chilling true horror stories experienced by people who were alone at work during the dead of night. So, turn off the lights, settle in, and prepare yourself for these terrifying tales. Our first story comes from a nurse named Lisa, who worked the night shift at an old, nearly abandoned hospital in a small town. The hospital was a relic from the early 1900s, with most of its wards closed down, leaving only a few rooms still in use for patients who needed long-term care. Lisa was used to the quiet and solitude of the night shift, but one evening, she experienced something that would haunt her forever. It was a cold winter night, and the hospital was quieter than usual. Most of the patients were asleep, and Lisa was doing her rounds, checking vitals and making sure everyone was comfortable. The floor she worked on was dimly lit, with only a few flickering lights providing a weak glow. The shadows in the hallway seemed to dance as she walked past, but she tried to brush off the uneasy feeling creeping up her spine. As Lisa approached room 307, she noticed the door was slightly ajar. This was strange, as she was sure she had closed it during her previous round. She pushed the door open slowly, expecting to see the elderly patient she was caring for sleeping in her bed. But to her shock, the bed was empty. Lisa felt a sudden chill in the air as she stepped further into the room. She checked the bathroom and the small closet, but the patient was nowhere to be found. Panic set in as she realized that the frail woman couldn't have gone far on her own. As she turned to leave the room and alert the other staff, she heard a faint, almost imperceptible whisper behind her. She froze, the hair on the back of her neck standing on end. Slowly, she turned around to face the room, her heart pounding in her chest. There, standing in the corner of the room, was the figure of an old woman. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes were hollow and empty. Lisa could barely breathe as she realized this wasn't the patient she was looking for. The figure stared at her with a blank expression, not moving, not speaking, just standing there, watching. Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered and went out, plunging Lisa into darkness. She scrambled for the door, her pulse racing, but as she reached the hallway, the lights flickered back on. She looked back into the room, but the figure was gone. Lisa eventually found the patient sitting calmly in a chair in the hallway, as if nothing had happened. She escorted her back to her room, but the experience left Lisa shaken. She later learned from an older nurse that room 307 had a dark history. Years ago, a woman had died in that very room under mysterious circumstances, and since then, staff members had reported strange occurrences. Lisa never worked the night shift at that hospital again. Our second story takes place in an office building in downtown Chicago. John was a night watchman, responsible for patrolling the building during the late hours when all the employees had gone home. The building was relatively new, so John never expected to encounter anything out of the ordinary. But one night, everything changed. It was around 2 a.m. when John started his rounds. The building was eerily silent, with only the hum of the air conditioning and the occasional creak of the floorboards breaking the stillness. John had walked these halls countless times, but tonight, something felt different. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. As he made his way to the 7th floor, he noticed that the temperature had dropped significantly. His breath began to fog up in front of him, which was strange because the air conditioning was set to a comfortable level. He brushed it off as a draft from a window, but the feeling of unease only grew stronger. As John walked down the hallway, he heard a soft tapping sound coming from one of the offices. He paused, listening intently. The tapping continued, rhythmic and deliberate, as if someone was tapping their fingers on a desk. He knew that no one should be in the building at this hour, so he approached the office with caution. The door to the office was slightly open, and the tapping grew louder as he got closer. John slowly pushed the door open and shined his flashlight inside. The office was empty, but the tapping continued. He traced the sound to a desk in the corner of the room. As he approached, the tapping suddenly stopped, and the room fell silent. John inspected the desk but found nothing unusual. He was about to leave when the door slammed shut behind him with a deafening bang. He spun around, his flashlight flickering, and tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. Panic set in as he realized he was trapped. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw movement. A shadowy figure appeared in the corner of the room, barely visible in the dim light. John's heart raced as the figure moved closer, its form becoming clearer. It was a man, dressed in an old-fashioned suit, his face pale and gaunt. The figure didn't say a word, just stared at John with hollow eyes. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure vanished and the doors swung open. John bolted out of the office, not stopping until he reached the security room on the ground floor. Shaken, he reviewed the security footage, but there was no sign of the figure or any unusual activity. John never returned to that office building. He quit his job the next day, convinced that the building was haunted by something sinister that he couldn't explain. Our final story takes place in a call center in a small town. The center operated 24/7, with a small team working the night shift to handle customer inquiries. Sarah was one of those night shift workers, accustomed to the quiet and monotonous nature of the job. But one night, she experienced something that left her questioning her sanity. It was a slow night, and Sarah was the only one on duty. She sat at her desk, scrolling through social media while waiting for a call to come in. The office was dimly lit, with only the glow of her computer screen providing any light. The hum of the fluorescent lights above her was the only sound in the room. Suddenly, Sarah's phone rang, startling her. She quickly answered, expecting a routine customer inquiry. But when she picked up, there was nothing but static on the other end. She waited for a moment, thinking it might be a bad connection, but the static continued, accompanied by faint, unintelligible whispers. "Hello?" Sarah said, trying to make out the words. The whispers grew louder, but were still impossible to understand. Then, just as quickly as it had started, the line went dead. Sarah hung up, unnerved, but chalked it up to a technical glitch. A few minutes later, the phone rang again. This time, Sarah hesitated before answering. When she did, the static and whispers returned, louder and more intense than before. She could make out fragments of words, but they didn't make any sense. It was as if multiple voices were speaking at once, overlapping in a chaotic, disjointed manner. Sarah's heart raced as she listened, trying to comprehend what she was hearing. Suddenly, one of the voices cut through the static, clear and sharp. "Help me." The words sent a chill down her spine. Terrified, Sarah hung up the phone and immediately called her supervisor, who assured her that it was probably just a prank call. But Sarah wasn't convinced. The voices had sounded too real, too desperate. The calls continued throughout the night, each one more disturbing than the last. The whispers grew louder, more frantic, and the pleas for help became more frequent. Sarah was on the verge of tears, feeling completely helpless and alone. Finally, as dawn approached, the calls stopped. Sarah was exhausted and shaken, unsure of what she had experienced. She told her co-workers about the calls the next morning, but no one believed her. They joked that she had fallen asleep and dreamed the whole thing. But Sarah knew what she had heard, and it wasn't a dream. She quit her job at the call center shortly after, unable to shake the feeling that something, or someone, was trying to reach out to her from the other side. These stories are a chilling reminder that when you're working the night shift, you might not be as alone as you think. Whether it's the restless spirit of a long-dead patient, a ghostly figure trapped in an office building, or mysterious voices calling out in the night, the darkness has a way of revealing things that are best left unseen. So, the next time you find yourself alone at work after dark, remember these stories and stay vigilant. You never know what might be lurking in the shadows. If you enjoyed these tales of terror, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss another story. And if you've ever experienced something strange during the night shift, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your